Please welcome to the show, Mr. Dan Geltrude. That was a good note this morning. I mean, nobody came at it from that point of view. So why don't you enlighten us, sir?
Sure. So, look, Scott, this is a tough situation, and it happens a lot. And look what we have going on in Florida, or soon to come, with this Hurricane Milton. It just hit Category 5. So here we go all over again. Now, what people have to realize is that when these catastrophes hit, it does take some time. The people in North Carolina, no question about, are suffering tremendously. And I do believe we're doing the best we can. But let's talk about what can be done. The first thing that you need to do is you need to contact your insurance agent. And that itself may not be easy. You want to know why? Because everybody's doing that. You have to figure out what your insurance coverage is. Now, there's a lot of discussion about, well, FEMA. Let's talk about what FEMA can do. First of all, there's a lot of flood damage. If you don't have flood insurance through FEMA or privately, you want to know something, Scott? You don't have coverage, which is unbelievable. But it does happen. I saw it firsthand when Superstorm Sandy hit New Jersey coast. It's a tough thing. But now, if you have the flood insurance, residential, you're covered up to $250,000. If it's commercial, it's $500,000. And you want to know something? Depending on where you are, Scott, that's not enough.
No.
So then you say, okay, where could I get money from? Now, the government does have loans available. As a homeowner, you can get up to $200,000 for your property damage. And for renters and homeowners, you could potentially get up to $40,000 for personal property damage. But again, Scott, that's a loan. You got to pay it back. Now, the last thing I want to cover for everybody out there is, what about your private insurance, your homeowner's insurance? Well, you got to look at what the policy says. Those things are tricky for a lot of people in New Jersey going back to Superstorm Sandy. People who didn't have policies that covered hurricanes, if that storm, when it hit, was a hurricane, a lot of people wouldn't have had coverage. But you want to know something? It was categorized as a superstorm, and therefore you were able to get coverage. So there's a lot of nuances here that people have to take the time to look at.
So what I heard from you there maybe is, for residents, you have up to $250,000 coverage if you do have insurance. You can get a $200,000 loan if you're an individual resident, and then also $40,000 on top of that, just for an individual, like a personal property loan or personal property. I mean, so you're almost at $500,000 a little coverage. I know that's still a lot of places that won't cover it, but that's a decent jumping off point, right? I know you have to pay back, 50% of it, but still, that is a little bit of help when you might need it the most.
Yeah, it is there, Scott. But again, first of all, you have the adjusters that have to actually get to you to make the assessment on the damage. Now, in my experience, when those people come out and they see the damage, they're writing a check to get you started immediately, which is very, very helpful. Now, I want to make one other point here, Scott, that some people may not realize. When you have homeowners insurance, flood insurance is specifically excluded.
Right.
It's excluded. So you may say, hey, I have homeowners, things are going to be okay. Well, if you don't have flood insurance and you have flood damage, well, things are not going to be okay. And you're going to have to look to see what your other options are here.
And, I got to give the government a little bit of a break, because this was a unique storm in those valleys. It's not like we would see normally happening on the beaches of Florida. But it's the optics weren't good when you hear about all the other money that we're sending abroad or spending on other things here. And we've got the, Mayorkas saying that he doesn't have enough money for the next hurricane, which is obviously going to be Milton. That maybe you're just a little bit of maybe tone deaf, because you can't help but see our own taxpayer money going to pay for stuff not that the taxpayers need. They need it the most now, and it's not going to them.
Yeah, that's very unfortunate, and it's very frustrating. And, I want to give a tip to some people out there right now, if they're not in harm's way. this flood insurance issue. A lot of people only get flood insurance because they're in a flood zone and it's required by the bank for their mortgage.
Yes.
But what I would tell people out there, if you are not in a flood zone, when you get these big storms, you may get a flood. So consider getting flood insurance. Price it out. Just have it there just in case. It may not be as expensive as you think.
Yeah, I mean, we're told that it's not as expensive as you think. It's just one of those things that goes by the by. And you get the flood zone rating when you buy your house. And you're right. If you have a mortgage, it will be mandatory if you are in a flood zone. But I think every state's kind of different with their laws about whether or not you can get, your own flood insurance, even if you're not in a flood zone. But you're right. That's one of those things. If it's not that expensive, it would be worth your while to at least look into it and maybe put a little bit of money aside for it, right?
No doubt about it. Listen, the unpredictability of weather these days, and I don't know what's causing it, and I'm not getting into that, but I do know this. Literally, it seems like anybody could end up in a flood. So you only need insurance when you need it. So if it's cheap enough, please put it in place.
This is great because, this was not the blame game. I appreciate your note this morning. It was a lot of these practical numbers are going to help a lot of people. Thank you very much, Dan. Dan Geltrude. He's America's accountant. He knows the numbers. That's one thing. That's what